All right, let's take a look at the writing and language section from the March 2021 test. Remember, our job on the writing section is not to gain information from the passage necessarily. We are using the questions to really guide us, using the answer choices to see what skill we are being tested on, and moving through the piece in that mentality. So, shedding light on the problem. Plant pollinating insects are essential to the reproductive process of many flowering plants, but the numbers of these insects are declining around the world. Interestingly, a 2017 ecological study led by Dr. Knoop suggests that artificial lighting, the modern convenience that many streets, may be contributing to the decline of organisms. So we need a word that also does light, and then we need to make sure that it is agreeing with our subject. So artificial lighting, the main modern convenience, so that is singular, so we need to maintain this S at the end of our word, illuminates. Remember that the simplest form of the verb is often going to be correct. So we can usually get rid of things like this right off the bat if they give us options like A and B. Number 2, so this is a punctuation question. Daytime pollinators such as butterflies and bees have many well-documented threats. So the team sought to investigate a potential threat to nocturnal pollinators. Artificial light. So this semicolon I know cannot stand between an incomplete and a complete sentence. This is incomplete. So I can go ahead and get rid of that one. I do need some punctuation of some sort. This is not necessarily mathematically wrong because it is a complete to incomplete phrase, but because we're wanting to know what this potential threat is and we learn the answer to that, the colon is going to be our correct answer. Number 3, little diction question. Before the plant's flowering began, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags to blank visits from pollinators. So we're trying to make sure the pollinators don't come, but they're not acting as little sheriffs. Again, they're not fighting. They're not revoking privileges. They're just preventing. To prevent visits from pollinators. However, others were left unbagged. Before plants began flowering, some of the plants were covered with mesh bags, and others were left unbagged. However, because it's hugged in commas, that's going to be really problematic unless we can move it to the beginning of the sentence. This reads as a parenthetical phrase. That's not going to work. Same thing with meanwhile. So that changes the connection between some being bagged and some unbagged. So this is just we need a WH word in order to maintain that complete, comma, incomplete sentence and showing that one thing is happening while another thing is happening as well. So now we need to look at this insertion question, and it's an ordering insertion question. We want to know where this goes. Half of the plants in each category, so I need to see a category, were then illuminated during the nighttime hours. So this needs to happen after the plants are separated into 2 categories. I think we just read that sentence. Before the plants began flowering, some of the plants were covered with bags and some were left unbagged. The scientists measured how much fruit each plant produced over the course of its life cycle. So I think it needs to go between these 2 sections after we establish the category, but before we look at the results. Number 6, we need to combine these sentences. The bagged plants couldn't be visited by pollinators. Because of that fact, the bagged plants self-fertilized and thus averaged only about this much. So because they could not be visited by pollinators, they had to self-fertilize. That's the connection we need to make. The bagged plants couldn't be visited by pollinators, so the lack of pollinators meant, that repeats pollinators, being that the SAT often does not like the word being. The pollinators couldn't visit the bagged plants, and those plants self-fertilized. It's not terrible, but let's see what D offers. Because they couldn't be visited by pollinators, the bagged plants self-fertilized. Yes, this one is clean, it's not repetitive, and it does its job by maintaining the relationship. Which choice provides accurate information from the graph? So first of all, we need to find our graph because I don't see it here. So it's right here. Let's look at it. Fruit production, the bagged plants had pretty minimal production regardless of if they were in the dark or illuminated sites. The unbagged plants had much higher. It was a little bit higher of production in the dark sites than the illuminated sites. So let's see what our question is asking. Number 7. and thus averaged only about, so we need to go back up to these bagged plants not being able to be visited by pollinators. So we need to look at both of the bagged plants. So bagged plants, it looks like the dark sites are about 16, 17, and the illuminated sites are about 18, 19. So both in the teens, the dark site a little bit lower. 15 and 85. Oh, I'm sorry, look, we're comparing the illuminated. No, that's correct. So both of the bags in the dark and the illuminated. So this is not going to be correct because we need the illuminated site to be kind of 17, 18. 15, regardless. So that's actually closer because we kind of said it was like 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 plants in the dark, but 80 in the fruit. And then I did not see 100 anywhere. So let's just go double check the graph because we need to look at the bagged plants regardless of site. And we're looking at bagged plants regardless of site. So it's kind of in that 15 to 20 range. So our answer is going to be B. All right, number 8 represents the information in the graph again. Whereas bagged plants, so remember these are our higher numbers, that were exposed to artificial light, so that's the illuminated. So let's do the illuminated. Oop. Okay, bagged plants were exposed to artificial light. So that's bagged plants in the illuminated site. That's still 18. We already looked at this. So if we look back at this question, the underlined portion is the plants and the light exposure, and we're needing to find something that matches the 78 fruits per plant. So let's see which one that is. So 78, so just below, so that is going to be the unbagged plants in the illuminated site. Unbagged plants from the illuminated site. So there we go. All right, number 9. It's always difficult when the graph is printed on a different page from the book, so make sure if it references the graph, you are looking at the graph. Which choice provides the best transition from the paragraph to the paragraph that follows? So we're looking to change this, and we need to wrap up what we just talked about and introduce whatever is being discussed here. So to finish up this paragraph, we just learned about bagged versus unbagged, dark versus light. Unbagged plants to the illuminated sites, which does something. The scientists also found that the decline in nighttime pollinators did something with the decline in daytime pollinators. So this one was all nocturnal pollinators, and all of a sudden we're introducing daytime pollinators. It looks like that is our change, so I need a transition that connects to those things. So we have daytime pollinators mentioned in D, so that is our answer. Now look at 10. It has coexisted, corresponded, correlated, coincided. So this kind of presents as a diction question, which word works. But as we read the sentence, the decline in nighttime pollinators coincides, decline, with daytime, or coexisted with, or corresponded. What this is actually testing are these idioms. So you can say coincides with, but you cannot say coexisted to, or corresponded for, or correlated in. So it would be coexisted with, corresponded to, correlated with. So A is the only one that uses its appropriate idiom. So now we need to move down here. Whatever the reason, artificial illumination clearly has adverse effects on plant pollination, and the increasing blank of artificial lighting may pose a problem. So we just need to see artificial lighting being there, and that is going to be a CE presence. So I can already get rid of A and B, and is the presence of. So again, another prepositional idiom question. All right, that is passage 1. Okay, so moving on to passage 2 of the March 2021 Writing and Language, starting with question 12. It looks like this is going to be a concision question. Already I can see reflects a new trend, or tendency, is reflective of a new national trend. So let's see if we can get rid of national or trend by finding it earlier in the sentence. The decision allowing employers to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and colorful socks reflects workplaces across the United States. Okay, so we can at least get rid of national trend because it already says United States. I don't see the word trend anywhere, so I think we do need to have that word here. So this is a situation where the shortest answer is not correct because it kind of inverts the meaning of the sentence. So in July 2016, the coffee shop chain Starbucks instituted a new policy to relax its dress code. The decision, allowing employees to customize their previously uniform looks with such accessories as hats and colorful socks, reflects a trend in workplaces across the United States. Yes, so we don't need to. We do need that trend. So this one connecting the sentence with appropriate punctuation. Let's start out. From retail services to large corporate offices, employers are finding that flexible dress codes can make a company more attractive to potential coworkers. So that's complete. Boosting morale among current employees. Okay, so that is currently incomplete. It has that ing. That semicolon is not going to work. Additionally, they would make this sentence complete, and additionally is not one of the fanboys. It's a transition word, so it cannot go between two complete phrases. This one offers us a period and boosting, and so that looks like it's not going to work because we're not going to start our sentence with and. So let's see if we can get rid of punctuation as completely and just have these as two items in a list. So they can make a company more attractive and boost morale among current employees. So we have potential and current, and so this is just two items in a list. We don't need punctuation at all. Number 14, we know that for pronouns, the him or her is almost never correct. I also see that they're offering me pronouns and proper nouns, and so it's probably going to be C or D. I need to figure out what this pronoun would be referring back to. It's either going to be employees or flourishes. Being able to personalize otherwise identical uniforms with unique flourishes can enhance happiness by allowing someone to have identity. So it needs to be the people, so it's employees maintaining identity. Number 15, so this is going to be like individual motives or motives of the individual. So this is a possession question. So individual motives may vary. So this is going to be the motives of the individual or individuals. So motives is not possessive, but individuals needs to be. Now we need to decide if it's one individual or multiple. Because it doesn't say the or an, I'm assuming it's plural. And because we say many potential employees, that employees is going to reference back to these individuals. So it is multiple individuals. The apostrophe needs to go on the outside. We want to set up the information that follows in the sentence with an accurate interpretation of the data from the table. So we're referencing this. Let's see how that sentence starts. According to a 2016 study, those surveys want to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code. And we have a colon, so we're about to see what pieces of the graph it's actually including. 31% business casual, and an additional 27% a casual or no dress code at all. So it's wanting us to look at this, which is going to be just over 50%. There's no option that's essentially none. 18% is our lowest, and that is not essentially none. It's definitely not all. Our only option that is fewer than a quarter is that the dress code doesn't matter to them, or they want a formal dress code. And since this discussion is relaxed dress code, we know it's neither of those fewer than a quarter. So it's that combined 50% that we see here. Use your punctuation and the rest of the sentence to guide you because it's telling you exactly what to add in order to get this number. Now we want to see if we need to add this information. This looks like it's just additional information to these numbers, and so the SAT does like to kind of complete that data scale. So let's see if it'll work here. We just learned that more than half want to be employed by a company with a relaxed dress code, and that includes the 31% preferring a company with business casual, and 20% wishing it was casual or not at all. Only 18%, so that only kind of emphasizes, only 18% preferred a more formal dress code at work. So I do want to keep this because it kind of continues on my discussion of this data. Additional evidence that supports the writer's argument. So yeah, most people want casual dress code, only 18. because it refutes an opposing point of view. The opposing point of view would have to be something that is oppositional to this 18% wanting formal dress, and so it is not B. Let's consider what it would look like if we had initially chosen no. Remember that you want to make sure that our reasoning follows one of the rules that the SAT provides. Misinterprets information from the table is not usually an answer that we see as a reason. Loosely related information, sometimes we will see loosely related, but in this situation, it is part of the discussion because it's people's preference on the dress code. So we should be able to get rid of those, even if we originally thought it was a no, because the information following doesn't match our addition needs. Now we're looking to introduce the main idea of the paragraph. So remember, I'm not going to read this underlined section. I'm going to read just the rest of the paragraph and come up with that. In addition to making companies more appealing to potential employees, something. When the accounting firm Crowe Horwath LLP asked workers what changes they would like to see in the workplace, workers said that dressing casually would help them most with something. So when asked, that is incomplete, which means I don't need this and. So let me go ahead and answer this one. Because the first phrase is incomplete, that semicolon is also going to be wrong. I'm not going to say when and while in the same sentence. So this is just B. So when asked what would help them, dressing casually would help them the most with being comfortable, being engaged, and being productive. I don't need a comma before this quote because it's not the employees said or workers said. So I don't need any punctuation at all. So we want to be comfortable, being engaged and being productive. The firm started allowing workers to wear jeans and other relatively casual attire, and the response from employees was overwhelmingly positive. With our change in dress, the level of excitement and feedback from our people has really been phenomenal. Okay, so we want to be appealing to potential employees, and we see like what we did and how the current employees are really happy with this. Dressing casually can also be a fun way to express individuality. I don't see discussion of individuality though, just comfort, engagement, etc. Relaxing dress codes can help businesses broaden their customer base. We're looking at employees, not customers. Foregoing formal work attire can also result in fewer conflicts between coworkers. I don't see conflicts between the coworkers so much as they're just happier to be there. Instituting a flexible dress code can also improve current employee morale, and that's what we see. We're moving from the potential employees to here's what current employees have to say. Formal workplace attire is blank and even required in some context. For example, job interviews, client meetings. So this is kind of like, it's a good thing to do. Admissible means like allowed. Unexceptional does not work. Genuine is like accurate or true to a situation. So this is just like, it's a good thing to do. Appropriate can stay. For example, job interviews and client meetings often require professional clothing, period. In certain occupations, such as law enforcement, uniforms without personal embellishments are still necessary. So uniforms is an example of formal attire. So this sounds like it's giving me an example of context in which formal workplace attire is still good. So I don't think however is appropriate. Conversely is also oppositional, like however is. Incidentally is kind of like, here's something that also happens that's like not accidental, but in addition to. So this is just going to be a furthermore. All right, and that is all for passage 2. Okay, so passage 3 for the March 2021 writing and language. Starting with the sentence, many search engines collect data from users, such as their locations and search histories. That's complete. They use what they gather to filter search results. So that's currently complete to complete, and it has a comma. That's not going to work. This semicolon followed by an and is not going to happen on the test. This has no punctuation and is still 2 complete phrases. So this is going to be our answer, and it's just that they collect data such as their location and search histories, then becomes a parenthetical phrase, and they use it. So they collect data and use it. 24, this is a diction question. We need to see what item is doing what to what. The invisible customization may create what media CEO Eli Pariser has termed a filter bubble, a biased worldview that is blank when it is consistently confirmed rather than challenged. So the filter bubble is a worldview that is kind of encouraged to stay the same because our ideas are confirmed instead of challenged. So that like continuing to stay the same or encouraged to continue to stay the same is going to be reinforced. Not necessarily that it's made bigger, it's just told that it's doing a great job. We're combining sentences at an underlined portion. So let's start this sentence up here. It is important, especially with regard to political issues, that search engines make their filtering practices explicit. When search engines make them explicit, so here's our repetition, users can be aware of potential biases when making important decisions. So it's important to make their filtering practices explicit so that users can be aware of potential biases. So not whereas, because that's going to be while. So like, well, this is true, that's true. Which has the result that it would be the result of, if anything. This is also a pretty chunky sentence. We need to do it so that this can be true. That works. This is an outcome that helps ensure. Notice that this is a colon and two complete sentences. That's not going to happen very often when we're combining sentences. It has happened on occasion, but it's not an effective way to combine sentences. So if there's a better one, choose that. Setting up the main argument of the entire passage. So remember, I can often choose this based on the first paragraph, but then I want to circle it real big to come back to it to make sure I'm still happy with it at the end. So search engines make it easier to keep up with current issues. We learned all this. They collect data and use that information to filter search results, creates a filter bubble that reinforces our ideas because they're not challenged. It's important with regard to political issues that we make filtering practices explicit so that people can be aware of their biases when making important decisions, especially when those decisions are shared with friends and family on social media. So far, I don't see anything about that, so I'm not going to choose it for right now. I don't see anything about statistics yet. We do see things about candidates, and I don't see anything about long-term effects. So for right now, I'm going to choose the one that deals with candidate selection and voter opinion just because politics has been introduced. Again, we can come back and check it to make sure. Psychologist Robert Epstein has shown how filter results can lead to political biases. This is one of those things where we need to remember what commas can't do. So results is our noun, and then can lead is our verb, so I don't need a comma there. They can lead to something, does not need any punctuation, so I can already get rid of B and C. This comma is also incorrect in C, so it's just no punctuation. Now we have a verb question. Notice that we have some past tense, we have some present tense, we have some singulars, we have some plurals. Participants whose searches favored a given candidate, 12% more likely to report a positive view than were participants in other groups. So here's our answer. Because this is reflective of participants, we know it needs to be plural, and the way we know whether it's past tense or plural tense is past tense or present tense is to match it to this one. So again, we know it's participants, so we can get rid of any singular options. And there we go. So now we have this use of however, and we need to decide if we need this however or not. While there is no evidence that commercial search engines intentionally skew their results in favor of certain candidates or positions, that's currently an incomplete sentence that has a while, so I'm already thinking I don't need this however. Filters based on users' browser history could produce similarly slanted results. So that's complete. This comma can stand because I do need something. I'm not going to while and however all within the same sentence unless I can prove that this is part of a parenthetical phrase and then there is a complete sentence later. So now we have our possessive question based on users' browsing histories. So this is the browsing histories of users. So I know that user needs to be possessive, so I can get rid of C. But histories is not possessive. It's just supposed to be plural. So it's going to be something that involves one of these IESs. I can get rid of anything with the Y''S. So I don't even need to know if users is singular or plural because my only option is to make it plural in order to get both the possession part and the plurality part. Now we're looking to transition from the previous paragraph to the information that follows. Remember that the previous paragraph kind of talked about The impact of these filters and these biases. Voters were divided into 3 groups. Each group was presented with results favoring a different major party candidate. The ones whose searches favored a given candidate were more likely to report a positive view of that candidate. Okay, so there's no evidence of intentional skewing of these results, but it does seem like it does have an impact. So we're moving from that conversation to most users think their searches display the full spectrum of perspectives on an issue. So that's not true. We just learned that in the last paragraph, but now we see that they think that. This possibility is especially troubling because of that fact. That works. The study therefore appears to contradict the idea that most users think something. Well, I can't contradict the idea that users do think something. Election outcomes are nevertheless unaffected since users think. Well, they're actually more affected because since we think our search is unaffected, we think we have all the information, so we think we're voting fairly, and we might not be. Search engine designers assume that people think this. That's not going to help our argument. So this is just, it's especially troubling because we think we're seeing the full spectrum of perspectives when we're not. The vast majority of participants in the experiment did not recognize the bias in their results. They hope to counteract this. A 2012 survey from Pew Research indicated 66% of respondents believed that results represented all views. So there's nothing about politicians in this second sentence. It sounds like we're getting information that a big majority think this, and a big majority think the same thing in this example. So it's really just 2 examples of the same concept. So not mitigating factors. Mitigating factors is when it's like there's an excuse or an explanation for something. Finding was by no means atypical, and then we get a second example. That could work. This was subsequently reversed. So 66% is not a reversal of 99. A reversal of 99 would be like 10%. So we can get rid of D because it's really just showing that a large majority. Now we need to see if we need to delete the underlined phrase and adjust punctuation. So let's see what it's adding. If search engines publish the information by displaying a warning that results are selected based on user preferences, for example, users would be better able to read political coverage online with an appropriately critical eye and thus base their political beliefs on a range of information. Okay, so publish information and display this information that shows that it could be based on user preference. So it sounds like that's going to be kept. So let's look at these 2. Kept because it introduces an additional point about filter bubbles. Kept because it supports the passage's argument about search engines offering a potential solution. So that's going to be my answer. It's not an additional point. If you had chosen delete, let's see why those are incorrect. Blurs the focus by introducing information unrelated to politics. No, because we're still discussing like people searching about politics. Delete because it repeats information. Remember, to choose the repeat information option, you have to be able to put your finger on where it repeats exactly. And in this case, I don't think it does. All right, and that is all for passage 3. Okay, let's look at passage 4 of the March 2021 Writing and Language, starting with number 34. We have a punctuation question. A 2015 study led by First Peoples Fund, an organization dedicated to supporting Indigenous artists, revealed that roughly 4 out of 10 households did something. So the study led by these people is what is revealing this information. And then we have this comma that opens this parenthetical phrase that tells us what the First Peoples Fund is. Because it opens with a comma, I need to close it with a comma. I know it's not a complete sentence after artist, and so anything that has to follow a complete sentence, like a colon or a dash, we can get rid of pretty easily. We need an effective transition between the previous sentence, or previous sentence to the information that follows in this sentence. So in 35, the previous sentence, so this sentence starts here. The previous sentence is going to start here. This finding reflects the deeply rooted importance of art within the reservation's Oglala Lakota culture. However, the study also concluded that the vastness of the reservation limited local artists' ability to collaborate with one another, find mentors, and sell their art. Oh, sorry, we read one too far. First Peoples Fund worked with a group of organizations to implement a plan for strengthening the creative economy of the reservation. So we need this to connect back to this however statement about the problems, the vastness and the limited ability to collaborate with one another, find mentors, and sell. So because of this, they did this work. So it's not regardless of their discoveries. We don't need to know where their headquarters is because that doesn't connect the problem with the solution. C does connect the problem with the solution. D is just a piece of trivia, and we know those are often incorrect. Now we have a subject-verb agreement. We need to figure out what our subject is, if it's plural or singular, and then figure out our verb tense. The outcome of the organization's combined efforts, so the outcome is our subject. Remember that prepositional phrases act as adjectival phrases, and so our subject is not going to be there. So the outcome is singular, so I can get rid of have, and I can get rid of were. And now we just need to choose our tense. So the outcome blank, this Rolling Res Arts, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaborations. We can also get rid of is. We already got rid of have. So look, we don't even need to know tense. It has to be was. So the Rolling Res Art, a bus that would serve as a mobile space to support artistic collaboration and forge critical partnerships with local finance institutions. So we need to see if finance institutions are part of the main points of the passage. Remember that we can choose this answer based on what we've already read and then just come back and double check it. I don't see anything necessarily about financial institutions. Commercial opportunities for artists in the area, that might work because they are selling their art. Access to computers, I don't see any discussion of computers. Offer entrepreneurship classes for people living on the res. Again, I don't see a discussion of classes, just them having a way to sell their art. So most likely this is B. We can come back and double check it at the end if we have questions. Number 38, we need information about Montelot that supports the paragraph's discussion. So we're going to finish the paragraph before we choose this. Rolling Res Art itself was a collaboration work of art by Ogallala Lakota artist. Donald Montelot did something, was selected to give the bus a distinctive appearance. He created a lavish design for the bus, and then we need to combine this sentence. So he created a lavish design intended for the side of the bus, had vivid pictograms of running buffalo, inspired by the narrative scenes of ledger art. Okay, so he created a lavish design for the bus that had vivid pictures of running buffalo. So the sides of which is a little excessive. Vivid pictograms of running a buffalo inspired. B could work. Bus's sides and this design. I don't need to repeat design. Sides of the bus in these places would be vivid. Okay, so in these places is a little convoluted. So B is our answer. So he created a lavish design for the bus, for the sides of the bus with vivid pictograms of running buffalo inspired by the narrative scenes of ledger art. After Montelot produced drawings of the design, an Ogallala graphic artist adapted them to fit the bus, helping transform the bus's exterior into a brilliant traveling canvas. So because this is the bus, it is going to be singular. Remember, ones is never the correct answer. The bus does not have a gender, so it's just going to be it. It is singular, not there. So now that we've read this, we need to figure out how to describe Montelot in a way that connects to this idea that he designed the bus using images from ledger art. I don't need to know that he is in the Hall of Fame. This introduces ledger art, which comes back, so it's probably going to be that. I don't need to know where he was featured, and I don't need to know what he contributed to as far as illustration. So A, C, and D have this thing in common where they all talk about his credentials, but only one of them, B, references ledger art, which comes back up in the paragraph later. Number 41, we have a diction question. The bus also hosts a gift shop whose manager buys works on site to sell elsewhere along the bus's travels, doing something with the artist's ability to benefit financially. So he is helping them benefit financially. He's not embellishing or exaggerating. That is almost like adding to in a way to make something prettier or more than it really is. Exalting is kind of speaking towards the greatness of something, and so he is just enhancing their ability. A can stand. So now we have a situation where we have a person's title and their name. We know that historically we are not going to put commas around this unless it is acting as a parenthetical phrase. For the most part, a person's title is just going to touch their name with no additional punctuation. The sentence starts out with local artist and rancher Tony Richards. Because it's not a local artist and rancher, I can't remove Tony Richards' name because then I would just say local artist and rancher used to have to drive. That's not going to work. So I need to make sure that there's no punctuation around his name at all. This would be mismatched anyway if it was a parenthetical phrase. This gives it at the end and not the beginning, which is incorrect. This one gave it at the beginning and not the end, which is mismatched and incorrect. So that proves it is our no punctuation option. Number 43. I already know that because the sentence starts with while, I'm not going to have a while here. While the organizations behind the project ultimately aim to open a permanent space, art space and gallery on the reservation to serve as a fixed cultural hub, that's incomplete. The art and motion of Rolling Res will continue. So that's complete. I can't have the semicolon. Because it's an incomplete to complete, I don't need a fanboy. So it's just going to be incomplete, comma, complete. D is our answer. Now we want to incorporate a direct quote that summarizes and reflects the main idea of the passage. So the main idea of the passage was how the Rolling Res art allows artists an opportunity to sell their art, be seen, make money. So we need a quote that kind of deals with that. Warren Gus, yellow hair, an artist trainer for First People's Fund, said, "What I do is contact some of the established artists and utilize some of their skills." That has nothing to do with making it easier for artists to make money. That's using artists for other purposes. Jeremy Staub, the program manager, said part of success depends on thinking about asset building, determining how to get residents comfortable with banking. So again, the focus is not on banking or asset building. Asset building would be like the purchase of land or property, items that are worth something. Brady McDonald said Rolling Res provides access to capital and addresses other needs in the community as it passes through the space where the community resides, which is beautiful to think about. Access to capital maybe from an artistic standpoint because they're selling their pieces. I don't know how I feel about the rest, so let's see what D offers. Lori Poirier, the president, said of the founding of the Rolling Res, "We had a conversation about doing something on wheels." Okay, so this doesn't really necessarily give us information about both the artist and the money they're making. So we do need access to capital by selling our art and also kind of getting people seen and finding, kind of making that connection. So we are going to stick with C.